Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. We are super excited to share how we at a community college implement culturally relevant project in chemistry and bio courses in order to promote civic awareness. We are from Government Community College, and my name is Ji Kim, and I teach chemistry.
And I am Ayisha Sookdeo, and I also teach at Guttman, and I teach biology there.
Next slide, please. Yeah, so it was the last summer, Ayisha and I, we've been talking about how we provide a co-project, interdisciplinary, culturally relevant project in order to provide more hands-on activity for our STEM major in chemistry and bio lab as a 3-week lab period. The one thing I want to let you know is a government community college, very small community college. So we offer only 2 sections of general bio and general chemistry. So it was very easy to manage and implement co-project. So the idea was students who are enrolled in chemistry, bio lab, they're gonna assign the individual task to read the article and watch the video and then investigate environmental and social issues on clean water. And also they could be asked to collect the water around the city, visiting some pen station, port authority, or airport, and then come back with their collection and do the test in chemistry lab and bio lab. But unfortunately, even in the moment, we are still on remote learning modality. So we have to refocus to the only library research. So next slide, I'm going to show you how we move to the library research from the chemistry viewpoint. So there are the sample question I put on over here. So students, after reading materials, watching video, they're going to tackle on simple like a water property, and also they talk about how we're going to maintain fresh water and the source of poor water quality and water cycle. And they did research on EPA guideline for drinking water requirement. And also we asked them have a copy of a consumer confidence report and see whether your drinking water is safe or not. And also we give them chance to tackle on flint water crisis by going over watching video and going over the source of the red, and also how the town took action when the resident complained about drinking water. So next slide, Alicia is going to take over, continue to discuss from a biological viewpoint. Next slide, please. And Alicia, take it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, G. So for my part of this project, we were looking at the biological viewpoint, and mainly in biology, when we're looking at chemical structures, we're really focused on how the structure equals their function. So what I wanted the students to do were to create water molecules and have their appropriate bond formation so that they can understand that structure of the chemical equals function on a biological scale. So we also wanted to look at both national and global aspects of how water influences life. And I wanted them to understand what the waterborne diseases are and what are more prevalent in the United States. So we gave them this opportunity to do a literature-based research project to look up waterborne diseases in the US and look at other things that can actually decrease the incidence of these diseases. Now, globally, we looked at typhoid fever, where it's highest in certain parts of the world, and we specifically looked at India and what they're using in order to alleviate these waterborne diseases. So at this point, they're looking at vaccinations, they're looking at the wash method, they're looking at multiple ways of alleviating these waterborne diseases. Next slide. Once we have that basis of understanding the structure of water, looking at waterborne diseases, both nationally as well as globally, we wanted our students to have a higher order thinking process as well. So we wanted to ask them a few questions. The first being, if you have access to clean water, is that considered a human right? And if you do have a water crisis at home, what would you do in order to alleviate that issue? And that's it. That's important. So if you were to have a water issue right now in your home, we're in New York City, right? If you have this issue right now, what would you do to rectify this issue? We also wanted our students to understand what the socioeconomic statuses are and how they influence how the government can handle a water crisis. We do have many water crises in our neighborhoods, right? So there were sewer line bursts in Rockaways or illegal chemical dumping. And we also wanted our students to understand the difference between renewable and non-renewable sources and to essentially provide a reasoning why they would think that water can be renewable or non-renewable. And finally, we the idea here, the goal really is for our students to not just take the science as is, and we want them to apply it to their everyday lives, whether they become scientists or not. We want our students to really have this understanding that, yeah, we have this reservoir, we have accessibility to water, but if we were to have an issue in our homes, in our neighborhood, in our communities, how can we alleviate those issues? Discuss mechanisms that you can use to reduce potential waterborne diseases, whether that's using a Brita filter, whether that's boiling our water, whether it's looking at the luxury, right? Although it shouldn't be, the luxury of clean water, and what can we do as normal citizens to alleviate other communities that don't have that luxury, right? So it's really putting a whole bow on knowing the science of it, applying it to our everyday life, both in our homes, in our community, in our nation, and then globally, and then finally leaving it on to what can we do as just normal citizens to create a safer supply of water. And that is our presentation. Oh, actually, sorry, we have one more slide. Sorry, next slide. And overall, from this overall presentation, we wanted to identify the learning outcomes. And so we came up with 4 learning outcomes. One is to gain knowledge of the chemical structure of water, and to identify how its structure determines its chemical properties. We wanted to determine how water quality is measured with respect to chemical and microbial contaminants. And the third one being how to maintain clean water supplies and how that influences community health. And I think that's a really underrepresented theme, is because we take for granted how our water really influences our health, right? And finally, to find mechanisms to alleviate our waterborne diseases, both nationally and worldwide. So the next steps on our project is really the hands-on, the really fun stuff that we want to get into once we move into in-person teaching. So the students will be able to receive conical tubes to collect water, and that can be anywhere. That can be at their home, at our school, at public restrooms, at the subway stations or restaurants that they visit. The goal is for them to write the water sample collection date, the time of collection, and the place, and then bring those samples back into class so that we can test them and analyze them. So in the chemistry lab, we'll be looking at the turbidity test, a pH test, and metals detection. And on a biology level, we're going to look at both bacterial and fungal tests. Really trying to piece together water quality and community health. And that is our presentation. Thank you for listening.